Hi guys, we're inside the newsroom here at Fox 5 DC. You're looking at a mountain rescue, a live mountain rescue in Phoenix, Arizona. We just saw some wider shots here, aerial pans of the helicopter coming in to rescue this crew. You can see the views over Phoenix, really gorgeous views. Hopefully everyone is okay. There seems to be a lot of people involved, possibly other climbers who are there. Hard to kind of start our show here on some horrible news for these guys, but hopefully they are safe. Also, in our headline we were mentioning, I'm going to go over to Massillon, Ohio. Here, you're looking at the reports that a middle school student has shot himself in the bathroom. Investigators are outside this scene. You can see it's quite chaotic here. This middle school is Jackson Middle School in Jackson Township, Ohio. That's in the Massillon area. And the reports are that this student, a male student, shot himself in the bathroom. No other students are in harm's way right now. Parents had somewhat of a frantic scene there as this sort of all occurred this morning, early this morning around 7:50 a.m. Students were released to their parents. The middle school stayed on lockdown, and the high school actually was dismissed and closed for the day. So Jackson Middle and High School are sort of a unit there as the Jackson local school district. The middle school has 6th to 8th grade students, and it's the largest middle school in that county. There's roughly 1,400 students there, and you can see some of them have stayed, it looks like, or possibly some of these are high school students and parents who are just sort of lingering out here in the scene to kind of hear what happens next. You can see the investigators sort of at the front of the scene here. They were providing some updates, and if they are updating us, we'll make sure we bring up that mic so you can hear. But the early report is that this happened in a boys' restroom at the school. The student was identified as a male and was taken to the hospital for treatment, but right now his condition is unknown. So that is what you're looking at now on our live stream, guys. We are live at Fox 5 DC here in Washington, DC, giving you this live video outside this middle school. So we'll bring you both scenes here. This currently, where we're hoping to get some information from investigators, and then also over to Phoenix for that mountain rescue among the cacti there in Phoenix. Bring you that shot here. And we'll jump in with any further information as well. So I'm going to split screen this for you guys and bring you more info as we have it. Hi guys, if you're just jumping on our stream, Molly here in the Fox 5 DC newsroom. You're looking right below on the left corner of your screen reports of that Ohio middle school student who is said to have shot himself in the boys' bathroom at Jackson Middle School. Parents were given information about how to pick up their students after this all occurred. In fact, an alert message was actually sent to parents from the superintendent, as is their policy at the middle school. And you can see right there in that chaotic scene, there's a lot of people just gathered around wanting to find out more information, hoping that they find their child or whomever it may be. Again, the middle school is Jackson Middle School in Massillon, Ohio. That's in Jackson Township in Ohio. The middle school is under lockdown right now. The high school has been closed, so a lot of these people, maybe some high school students as well, some parents coming over, maybe to grab siblings, maybe to grab friends, and to find out more information. Now, police said they will update this investigation as soon as possible, possibly not another update until later in the afternoon, the early afternoon, or we're hoping for something a little sooner than that. We'll just kind of listen into this stream to see what we can get from this live video, but also live pictures right to the right of your screen of a mountain rescue in Phoenix. Sometimes these happen. Obviously, there are many areas of hiking and whatnot among the cacti overlooking that city, and these aerials are what we get from the chopper camera. And you can see pretty good close-up here of something going on. You can see possibly a stretcher, some sort of other medical apparatus going on there. And so we'll bring you these two feeds alive. If we get one of them dropped, we'll bring you the other one, but just kind of keeping you in the loop of two big live things that are going on today, of course, in the wake of the shooting from last week, in the wake of everyone talking about guns and guns in schools and gun control. This is of high alert. This is important. People are watching these scenarios. The student is said to have been transported to the hospital. His condition is unknown. This happened early this morning around 7:50 a.m., so late towards the 8 o'clock hour in Ohio. Again, a self-inflicted gunshot wound is what they believe, and that no other students are in danger. We're gonna let you watch this for a little bit, kind of take in the scene here. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment on the stream. Let me know what you're thinking about. If you have any thoughts or something, I can look up some more information as we get it into our newsroom here on this Ohio situation, and then also this rescue, which is quite clear. The picture is quite clear there on top of the mountain, pretty high up there. Looks like a little bit of a scary scene, but we'll leave it here for you to check in. It looks like the officers may be saying something. I know they had sort of some sort of microphone earlier where they were spewing something to the crowd, at least to assuage them a little bit of their fear of what was going on. But we do believe this is a contained situation, and that this self-inflicted gunshot, or whatever it was self-inflicted, is contained to that one person who the police have identified as a male student at that middle school. The middle school is still on lockdown. Hi guys, if you're just joining us on the stream, right below my face here on the left corner of your screen is the scene outside of an Ohio middle school. It's in Massillon, Ohio. That's 50 miles or so south of Cleveland, where police say a middle school student, a 7th grade boy, shot himself inside of the bathroom. Now, it is not known whether this was intentional or not, so we still don't know those details. We know that he was transported to a nearby hospital, and his condition is still unknown, unfortunately. So kind of a sad situation there at this middle school. You can see family members, parents, kids gathered around as this school is now on lockdown, and parents are here to gather their child perhaps. The high school has been dismissed, so the high school, as part of the unit, Jackson Middle and High School, is in Jackson Township, which is a part of that town. Massillon, 50 miles south of Cleveland. That's what you're looking at here. You can see the authorities are there outside of the doors, sort of guarding the doors, and we're waiting on some updates from investigators. They mentioned a few things earlier, but we're waiting for them to provide another report, hopefully early this afternoon, if not into the later afternoon. We're not quite sure when they're going to say something, so I do want to leave it on this stream as long as that we have it. Right corner of your screen is a live rescue going on in Phoenix, Arizona. From time to time, this happens, and we get these pictures from aerial choppers. You can see now on the left corner of your screen, let's take this full here. There is a stretcher going in there, so it's possible that they are making some moves to get someone out of there, or we may hear from them. Let's listen in.
I think that's what I discovered. Zip them out. You can just see her head.
You're watching on coverage of Fox 5 Live from the DC newsroom of this report that a 7th grade student at this middle school has shot himself in a bathroom. Now, his intention and the condition of himself physically is unknown at this time. They're working on getting more information for us. We'll have more as they give it to us. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to use that live chat box to get in touch with us here in the newsroom, and we'll try to provide more information for you as you continue to watch our live stream. Remember, this is all raw and unedited video, so it comes to us as it is, courtesy of the stations out there, so it could be interrupted at any time. We're going to watch it and see how long we have this stream as we report this breaking news.
go in there.
They are not near us. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say close. It froze for like 3 minutes. Bob, walking toward us. I talked to Kelly on stage. Yeah. When we were on the way here, I think we were behind the bomb squad, Dave, right? Weren't we behind the bomb squad on the way here?
Yeah.
Huh? I'm working with a very distinguished person.
You know how he knows that, Morgan? It's still in the same.
That's right.
Are you able to stand on that or no?
I feel like I'm going to break my ankle. Okay. need to. I have a live shot in like 2 minutes. So I guess eventually like this. So there's another updated tweet. That's what I do now. I'm not sure where it is. Probably somewhere around here. But yeah, we don't have anything. Yeah. Sorry, can't we have more help? Oh my gosh, no problem. Well, enjoy school. I will. Okay. Goes too quick. Good as it gets. Okay, but is it class? No, it's a break. Okay. I always prefer a light. Makes me feel better. Makes me feel like I might look slightly better. Should I go out this way?
Yeah. Looks like everybody moved out.
I'll do that. Bleach. Mr. Secret
Basically, they're complaining that everybody has to stay with the 10 at a time system and that they can't force you to be orderly, but they really appreciate it if you talk. That's all I'm saying. So we're still in it. No.
Bob, it's only been a few hours, but it feels like an eternity for the parents who have been waiting here to see their children here at Jackson Middle School. You know, I understand whatever this stuff, but some people frustrated with this lengthy dismissal process, but police want to make Good times. Now we want to head up to John Rudder, who has been circling above us all morning. He has a bird's eye view of exactly what's going on here on the ground.
Oh, you did? I'll move out of the way. So Tiffany Tarpley here with Channel 3. We are at Jackson Memorial Middle School. We've been out here most of the morning. They've just let some of the first students out. So you can see here, sheriffs.
You guys know. Test 1 2 1 2. Yeah, mom got it. They usually got the fifth grade band kids in here, too. Yeah, they said 6, 7, and 8. I forgot. Days like today, the fifth grade band. I know. It's like, uh-oh. 10 out of the day, 10 out of the time. They're gonna wait till location.
Yeah, I'm like ready to homeschool, you know? You can't even send your kids to school here. Then again, it could be
Did Ariana come up? All right.
I'm going to go ahead and, can you all hear me pretty clearly? If not, I can speak a lot louder, I swear. But buenos dias, everyone. Good morning. I'm really happy to be here in a room full of leaders who are on the front lines of really fighting for working families. So I want to say thank you and good morning as well. I'm Tony Navarrete, and I'm honored to serve the 30th District in Arizona State Legislature, but it is also my privilege to serve as the Deputy Director for Promise Arizona, a local community-based organization that really started out of the firestorm of SB 1070 and is now dedicated to advancing policies that are strengthening families and also working to increase civic participation across the state. So, thank you very much. So it is my honor to welcome you all today and also welcome our very special guest. I know we have our former state senator, David Lujan, who's going to be here with us today. We also have Representative Raul Grijalva from Arizona and our Democratic Minority Leader, Nancy Pelosi. These individuals have not only championed working families, but they have been fighting for comprehensive immigration reform. And we know that Arizona has been the epicenter for a lot of anti-immigration legislation that has gone on for too long. So with that, I just want to share a little bit about what brought me here today. At an early age, I was actually agitated to really think about social justice, breaking cycles of poverty, and I've seen firsthand as serving the state's lowest median income district, I've seen firsthand the challenges that families face and how hard they have to work to make sure that they are providing for their families so that they have a better life. And I also seen tens of thousands of DACA students who are really trying to question where we are today. It's a really tough situation that we're facing. But I also do want to mention that, a lot of this work that is being done here locally and at the national level is also thanks in part to the National Council for La Raza Action Fund. So I'm really happy to have them here as well today. Thank you. So this conversation that we're having today, it's part of the Trump Tax Tour, which is a 100-day tour that is going around the country explaining the dangers of the Trump tax. This, I know, no, I'm going to try to be careful with my words, because when I say those two words, it can come off a little weird. But this conversation actually started in Kansas just last month, and Kansas has special insight on what we can all expect here. Just a few years ago, their governor passed massive tax cuts to the wealthy and corporations. And the governor thought that it was going to help their economy grow and let everyone else fend for themselves. But what we've seen is that it was a disaster. And not only was it a disaster in Kansas, but it was a disaster that can happen across the country. So the plan that Congress worked on and the tax cuts that they've had were primarily for millionaires, billionaires, and the wealthy corporations. That is not okay. Absolutely, it is not okay. So that leaves the rest of our families who are working hard to really fend for themselves as well. Families that are just simply trying to provide for their families, students who are trying to pay for their student loans, or simply workers that are just trying to pay for their commute to work. This is wrong. And that's why it's important that we're here today having this important conversation about how we're going to repeal the Trump tax and how we're going to count on you to help us along the process. So the Trump tax raises taxes on 100 million American families, but the top 0.1% are going to benefit at the tune of $150,000 a year. And I'm going to say that again. The 0.01% will benefit on the tune of $150,000 a year. That's not okay. Under the Trump tax, corporations see a huge tax cut, about $1.4 trillion. That's a 40% cut. We're not going to see that cut, I guarantee you. So that's why we're here today. We have to repeal the Trump tax because not only is it bad for our country, it is bad for our city, and it is also bad for our future. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Nicole Gill, who will be moderating this event, and she is the executive director of the Tax March, which she works with a large coalition of progressive organization and policy experts to advance economic campaigns focused on helping working families. And the Tax March started just about a year ago, just an idea on Twitter that took off as a movement. So please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Nicole Gill to the stage.
Thank you so much, Tony, for welcoming us and giving us a baseline understanding of what we're going to talk about today. So like Tony said, I'm the executive director of Tax March, which is an organization that advocates for more progressive and fair economic policies, especially around the recent tax bill that is now the law. We are on this tour talking about what the bill does and how it will affect everyday Americans, and spoiler alert, not good. That was a laugh line. There we go. There we go. Warming up a little bit. So we're going to be continuing this tour until April 15th, and on April 15th, Tax Day, everyone's favorite day, we will again take to the streets to demand that Trump release his tax returns, first of all. And advocate for repealing this awful, awful bill, the Trump tax. So it is great to be in Arizona. Thank you so much for welcoming us. I want to thank the Arizona Center for Economic Progress, Unidos, and Promise Arizona Action for helping us put on this event, as well as all the staff of this wonderful event space. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce our panel, and then we will we'll ask some questions. You all should have been given question cards when you came in. Please fill those out. Our staff will be circulating throughout the crowd and picking them up, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So first we have David Lujan, who is the director of the Arizona Center for Economic Progress and vice president of the Children's Action Alliance. He's also a former member of the state Senate and the State House of Representatives. He's worked on public policy for more than 20 years and is a bit of an expert. Please welcome David. Representative Raul Grijalva has represented Arizona's 3rd congressional district since 2002. He began his career as a community organizer in Tucson and since then has not stopped advocating for those who do not have a voice. Please welcome Representative Grijalva. And last, but never least, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi is with us. She leads the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives, and of course, from 2007 to 2011, she served as the first woman Speaker of the House, and not the last. With that, let's get started. I'll turn it over to David, who's going to give us a broad understanding of what's in the bill and what it means for Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll start by giving you a little bit of Arizona context. In Arizona, 1 in 4 children live in poverty. Arizona has one of the highest gaps of income inequality in the nation and is growing fast. 27% of our Latino population lives in poverty, and that's the largest, fastest growing segment of our population. So despite the fact that there are parts of our economy that are doing well, many people in Arizona are hurting, and they're looking for economic opportunities to lift themselves up and policies that are going to create better opportunities for them and their families. And that is the opposite of what the Trump tax cuts do. The Trump tax cuts will raise 83% of the Trump tax cuts benefit the top 1%. So it's just creating wider gaps when it comes to that inequality. And although people are seeing more money in their paychecks, a small amount, it doesn't come close to offsetting what the costs and the additional barriers that people are going to face in the future because of the costs of these tax cuts. Things like higher healthcare costs, cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, making college less affordable because of cuts to Pell Grants, housing, all sorts of things that really help Arizona families to get ahead are going to be hurt because of this tax cut bill. And when you talk about the tax cut bill, it raises the deficit by $2.2 trillion when all is said and done. And so how do you pay for that? How do you deal with that deficit? And that's why it's a two-part plan. One is to do the tax cuts, and that's where everybody's seeing a little bit in their paychecks now. But then now comes the really hard part where they're going to be cutting, and that's what's going to impact Arizona families. I think we're going to see significant cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. We already saw, as part of the tax cut plan, the repeal of the individual mandate. And so that's going to raise people's health care premiums and really raise medical costs for a lot of people in Arizona. So that's why I say that that small amount that you get in your paycheck today will not cover the costs. And the tax cuts for most Americans are going to go away. They're just temporary, whereas the tax cuts for the top 1% in corporations are permanent. And so we've already seen this plan in Arizona. If they were to look at Arizona as the test case, they could see that this is an economic failure because in Arizona, we have been cutting taxes every year since 1990. And having served in the legislature for 8 of those years and being on staff for many of the other years, I can tell you that every single time those tax cuts were passed here in Arizona, the proponents of those tax cuts said that these tax cuts are going to bring tremendous economic growth and new jobs and really help Arizonans. And no state has cut taxes more consistently and regularly in Arizona. And I think we can all say we have never seen the economic benefits that were promised. If you look at just about any economic indicator, Arizona is below the national average when it comes to job growth and GNP, and our public education system is one of the most underfunded public education systems in the country. Our corporate revenues this year are predicted to be the lowest since 1993. So use Arizona as an example. When you cut taxes, it does not result in economic growth. It adds up to more costs for more people, and that's what the Trump tax cuts are going to do, is going to add more costs to more Arizonans. And now I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Grijalva.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here, and to the organizers that put this together, thank you. It's an important discussion because when we're dealing with this tax cut / scam that the Republicans passed and that President Trump signed, we're dealing with illusion. And that illusion is not based on reality. The reality is, as my colleague just mentioned, there's a history involved here. That this trickle-down process, that we will do these massive cuts for 1% for corporate America, and as a consequence of that, everything else will spring flowers. That has not occurred. And it hasn't occurred in history. It didn't occur under Bush, and we are repeating that again. The very valid and real example of what has happened in Arizona for a decade plus or more is also true. And there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that is being set up in this whole discussion about the tax cuts. That we're going to blow up the deficit and the debt by 2.2 trillion. And because of that, now we have to look at how suddenly the realization will come that we have a deficit created by the tax cuts. Now we will move into the second phase of this self-fulfilling prophecy, which is, let's begin, we need to balance the budget. We'll go back to that fiscal hawk discussion that they purport to have. And then we will begin to look at education. Then we'll begin to look at support services. Then we'll begin to look at how we can punish the poor and in order to create revenue, and affecting our veterans, affecting our disabled community. And that'll be the first step. The second one is what there has been a lust by Republicans for a long time, particularly Speaker Ryan, and that is to now go to the earned benefits of the American people, Medicare and Social Security. And we're already seeing effects in those areas. We already see the projected reductions that'll happen in those areas. To begin to tamper with that and is the next step. So they fulfilled their prophecy. They fulfilled what they've always wanted to do by initiating this tax cut. A tax cut that 83% of it goes to the richest, 1% into corporate America, and for the rest that will receive a trickle in this first year in their returns, it disappears. So I also want to use a very good example that my colleague mentioned as well, the issue of education. Because all of what I've just talked about is set out in the blueprint that Trump and the Republicans sent out as their budget proposal. That's the blueprint of how those cuts are going to happen. And the devastating cuts in education, the dismantling of the federal commitment to support public education and education in this country is torn apart. And you look at that, and you look at what's going on in this state, where we rank in terms of not only achievement, but on the resources dedicated to children in this state, it's abysmal. One of the worst. and continuing to get worse. No amount of ads are going to cover that up. And the issue to me is that those cuts replicated at a state level begins to disinvest in the most important asset that we have in this country of ours. It's our people, and in particularly our children. So this budget is not about investment. This budget is not about fairness. This budget is a giveaway to the donors, and we pay the bill. And future generations pay the bill. And so these discussions are important. We can't be led into some illusion that this tax cut is going to really spring economic growth. On the contrary, it's going to take us the same direction. History will repeat itself, and we'll be paying the price. Let me now introduce my leader in Congress, Nancy Pelosi. God willing and the creek don't rise, the future Speaker of the House of Representatives.
I thank my distinguished colleague, Congressman Grijalva, for his kind words, but more importantly, for his great leadership in the Congress of the United States. And I thank all of you for sending him to the Congress. Thank you so much. Thank you all. I thank Nicole Gill and the Tax March for their leadership, the ongoing. We've been on a number of events around the country together, and their persistence in speaking truths to the American people about what is in this tax bill. Thank you, Nicole. And David, thank you, David Lujan, for your clarity in presenting what is in this bill and being available to even give us more clarity on it. It's an honor to be here with you and the State Rep Navarrete. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Right there. Thank you. Thank you. It's nice. It's wonderful to be with you all, and it's wonderful to be with all of you. When I look around and see you on this President's Week, and that you have taken the time to come we can learn to teach each other about how we see this assault on really America's working families. It is really encouraging. It's President's Week. You're doing a patriotic thing to be here. I just want to quote President Washington, because last week I had the privilege of going to Mount Vernon with a bipartisan group to pay tribute to the president. And this is one thing I learned that he said that was new to me, and I'll read it so I have it exact. As a young schoolboy, George Washington transcribed 110 rules of civility and decent behavior, a list of Jesuit-inspired moral maxims. And this is what his final rule reads: labor to keep alive in your breast the little spark of celestial fire called conscience. Conscience. And how that relates to where we are now is these issues about the tax cut and then the cuts to initiatives that help people, that's part of the budget. The national budget should be a statement of our national values, of what is important to us as a nation, which makes us strong and builds for the future, should be reflected in our budget. But what we have seen here is the complete opposite. So this isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This is about the United States of America, about our children's future. And again, it can't possibly be a statement of values for us to talk about, as Martin Luther King said, God really didn't intend, let me read his, God really didn't intend, never intended for one group of people to live in superfluous, inordinate wealth while others live in abject, deadening poverty. So these are kitchen table issues, though, for America's families, because most people are not in deadening poverty, but some are. But most people have to struggle to make ends meet. So, no, we're not talking about that. So in any event, now I'm a mother of 5, I can speak louder than anybody. Here's the thing. When the Republicans made these cuts and tax cuts at the high end, 1% going to the top 83% of the cuts going to the top 1%. Shocking, but that's what it is. When they did that, they said, and the big tax cuts for corporate America, 1.34 with interest over $2 trillion in tax cuts going to corporate America, they said we're going to have to cut Medicare and Medicaid because we've now increased the deficit, the national debt. So is that a statement of values for us as a country? Now just think, Medicare, an earned benefit, and really sustaining middle-class families. Medicaid, 2/3 of the people on Medicaid are poor children. But that only can, and David, thank you for pointing out the needs in Arizona for our children, but that only accounts for 1/3 of the budget. 2/3 of the budget go for long-term health care, seniors with at-home care or in institutional care. So this is a middle-class benefit that they're undercutting. So when you sit around that kitchen table as a family and see what it does in terms of seniors in the family and what that means to opportunity that are lost for investing in children because you're caring for a whole family, this is totally wrong. So let me just say, take it, for example, this budget, okay, $1.4 trillion cut from Medicaid, 2/3 of that money going for seniors in long-term care. $500 billion cut from Medicare. Over $200 billion cut from food stamps. Over $200 billion cut from education and workforce training. What is this? What is this? So as that affects families and their futures, you have to say they gave a tax cut to the high end of corporate America, stolen from our future by taking us deeply into debt and diminishing our investments in people, with conscience, on a budget that would be a statement of our values. So the other part of it is we honor our veterans. Here we are, President's Week, very patriotic. Over 1 million veterans are on Medicaid. Over 500,000 of them are on food stamps. So this has an impact really deeply into our society. Why? To give a tax cut to the high end. To rob from our children's future by saying we're going to have $2 trillion added to the deficit. And you know what's dangerous about that is the interest on the national debt, the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars that rob us from doing it. So let's try to find a bipartisan route that says this is not what our country is about. Now just think this. On Thursday, I had a conversation with the White House about the infrastructure. So we've talked about who benefits from this tax bill, and we talk about the detrimental impact on the budget. But infrastructure was our hope for the creation of good-paying jobs going into the future and the rest. And they have an infrastructure bill that is very small. It's $200 billion over 10 years. And that may sound like a lot of money, but it should be, the president's advertising it as a $1.5 trillion initiative. But it's not, it's a small one. The $1.5 trillion is almost exactly the tax cut he gave to corporate America. Instead, wouldn't it have been a good idea, Mr. President, to pay $1.5 trillion to build the infrastructure of America? Jobs across America. Jobs across America. Certainly surface transportation, mass transit, water. Some of our water systems are 100 years old, made of brick and wood. Broadband, jobs of the future as well. Not only creating jobs in construction, but promoting commerce and continue to create jobs all across America. Again, broadband into rural America and other places underserved. The list goes on and on. It cleans the air, and our ranking member on the Natural Resources Committee can attest to this better than anyone in terms of fresh drinking water, clean air for our children, food safety, things like that. that are completely ignored to give a tax cut at the high end like that and say it's going to trickle down. I'll just identify with one more thing, and then I'm eager to hear your question. Mr. Grijalva mentioned that this doesn't pay for itself. They try to go around and say, oh, these things pay for themselves. One of the architects of the plan when it was earlier advanced by Jack Kemp.
Hi guys, you're watching this coverage of a Trump tax tour town hall in Phoenix, Arizona. As you can see, Nancy Pelosi, Democratic Minority Leader, is up there speaking. I don't want to cut into too much of her time, but I just wanted to vary what you're watching a little bit and show you around. Possibly you came on the stream to check out the story about the Ohio student who allegedly brought a gun to school and shot himself in the bathroom this morning. Now, we don't actually have any more details, unfortunately, on that story. Condition of that student is still unknown, and we don't know if that shooting of himself in that bathroom was intentional or not. Like I said, if we get more information, if there is possibly a press conference or any other information from investigators, we'll make sure we bring that to you live. But meanwhile, I want to quickly show you a shot down in Florida. This is Tallahassee area, or rather this is Coral Springs, Florida, where students actually just finished with a funeral service for one of the victims, one of the students who was killed at the Parkland shooting last week. And they are about to board buses here. You can see families, cameras. They're about to board buses to go down to Tallahassee to march. They're marching for the victims. They're marching for life, and they have an agenda here to make a statement. And so we might possibly get some aerials in of that march. I know we've seen other areas of the country, also particularly schools in Florida, do this same thing where students are walking out of their classrooms and hosting some sort of protest or reform protest in the streets. In this case, they're gathering, like I said, in Coral Springs, Florida, after this one funeral, to get on buses and to haul down to Tallahassee to make their statement. So that's the look that we have inside that parking lot. You can see students there speaking with reporters, parents, family members, lots of media there, lots of coverage. So I'm going to bring a double screen for you guys to kind of watch this scene as they board these buses, and then we'll bring you the audio from Nancy Pelosi at this town hall, this Trump tax tour. It's part of this Trump tax tour that they're holding all over the nation. Nancy Pelosi happens to be part of this one in Phoenix.
That gives them the liberty to live their lives and justice for all. So I'll yield back and eager to hear your questions.
Just a reminder that if you have a question, we'd love to hear from you. Shireen is going to be circulating through the audience. Lovely Shireen. She can take your questions and we'll try to get to as many as possible. I also neglected to thank Organizing for Action for helping us put this event on. The LGBT caucus of the Democratic Party was also helpful. Thank you. And I'm sure I'm forgetting other groups, but you're all a very friendly audience, so I encourage you to introduce yourselves to one another after and see how we can all work together.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump right into things. So we have been in a number of states talking about the bill and what it means, and a lot of times we use large national statistics. 83% of the total tax cuts will go to the top 1% of earners. Let's break it down a little bit more for Arizona specifically. So according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, the richest 5% of Arizona residents will get 50% of the total tax cuts from the bill, while the bottom 60% of earners, 60, will get 13% of the total tax cuts. So it's a little weighted in one way.
A lot weighted.
A lot weighted. Mm-hmm. Representative Grijalva, I want to start with you on this, and let's talk a little bit about what that is going to mean for the citizens that you represent. You see them day to day, you understand their challenges. How is this going to further impact their lives?
The residents that I have the privilege of representing in the district face a lot of challenges. I have large swaths of rural Arizona in the district. I have concentrations of economic need in the district. I have Native American reservations in the district. I have large numbers of veterans in the district and also age-wise, one of the youngest districts at the same time. And so when you look at that disparity that you just outlined, it goes back to that we are not, in this district, not confronting the fact that people are not receiving the opportunity, are not being lifted up, and the lack of revenue, and certainly almost purposefully on the part of the government of the state of Arizona and its leadership, and also purposely by the federal government, does not do anything about beginning to turn a situation around with people meeting many challenges, people needing support, children needing investment, and on the contrary, it makes the situation worse. And you see it every day, you see the frustration, you see people working hard every day, not seeing a commensurate wage and salary difference in their lives, and let's not categorize those people that the harvest box people, as this administration is trying to put it, poor people that don't want to work. On the contrary, they work hard, and the sense that they're spinning their wheels, the sense that the future for their children will not be better than their future is palatable, and it's palatable because one of the things that this country is, at least my parents, and I'm a first-generation American, they felt my future was going to be better, and they were right. And they invested in this country and worked hard. Now you have that same attitude, that same work ethic, and yet the sense that it's not going to be better. I think that to me is so un-American in the sense that we are not providing an opportunity. Government is there in a helping role. It's not a role to control and to tell people and to control people. It's to help people, to give them the seeds for them to be able to move forward. And in my district, that disparity will continue a pattern that has been very difficult to get out of. It's frustrating, but at the same time, I think what has happened in the last 3 or 4 years, particularly this year, is the understanding on the part of a lot of people in the district that they have a role in changing this. And I think that that has been one of the healthy things that have come out of this.
Let's talk a little bit about the bonuses. So the past few weeks, you've all heard, I've heard many large companies announcing that they are giving their employees bonuses. Some of these are, around $200, some of them as high as $1,000 is pretty much what we've heard. But at the same time, a lot of these corporations are also laying off workers or closing stores, like Walmart did. The same day they announced their bonuses, they closed 63 Sam's Club stores without giving their employees any notice. Just last week, actually, PepsiCo announced bonuses for its employees, and in the same press release, actually announced they'd also be cutting jobs. So I have two questions around this issue. One is, why are companies giving bonuses, and more often giving bonuses instead of raising people's wages? And then also, I want to talk a little bit about stock buybacks and kind of define what that means and why we should pay attention to it. So David, why don't you start with the first part about wages?
Sure. Well, it is a very good point that many of these companies are giving bonuses, one-time payments, where the corporations do not just get bonus, they got permanent tax cuts that will last forever and are significantly insignificant in size. And so, and then when you talk about the buybacks, I think we're seeing record levels of buybacks this year, which means corporations are taking that money and giving it back to their stockholders, as opposed to putting that money into research and development, trying to find new innovative ways to grow their businesses. When you put the money into R&D and innovation, that's investing in the workers. That's creating new jobs. That's creating new wealth for your workers, lifting them from the bottom up, as opposed to the corporate buybacks, which are just giving money to the shareholders. So both the buybacks and the bonuses are just a means of rewarding the corporations instead of the employees.
All right, let's go back to talking about the budget and its relation to the tax bill. So something you all mentioned was cuts to social services and programs that Americans rely on. Actually, almost immediately after the bill passed, Paul Ryan made public comments about the need to reduce spending on Medicare and Medicaid to, quote, tackle the debt and deficit. And then we saw a budget release last week that further exemplified those principles. I'm wondering, Leader Pelosi, if you can talk a little bit about what that will mean for people in their day-to-day lives. How will we see this take place, and what can we do about it?
Well, when we talk about the national budget, we have to be sensitive to what it means in people's personal budget, their family budget, and also what it means for their family prospects. So they make some very false decisions, wrong decisions in this. For example, I know that education keeps coming back to that because that's really the best investment that a family can make in its children, a community can make in its schools, and a country can make in its future. And like when they cut, for example, in the budget, education and training, they're making...
Your mic isn't on, so you can speak louder until we fix it.
Well, I have 5 children. One of them is here, my daughter Nancy, who lives in Phoenix with her family.
Oh, I have to turn them on.
Public schools in the area, and her husband teaches in public school. He's a teacher of special needs. So that's why education is so central to how we consider the relationship of the public sector to meeting the needs of the American people. Can you hear me? No?
Her mic's on.
See if we get this.
Okay, can we turn this one
better?
Okay.
Did somebody come unplug back here or something?
It seems like it, but you can use this.
Okay, I'll use this. Thank you. So here's the thing. When you're putting together a budget, nothing brings more money back to the Treasury than the education of the American people. Whether it's early childhood education, K through 12, higher education, post-grad, lifetime learning. Lifetime learning. So when they say, well, we've got to freeze Pell Grants, as they do, and reduce our investments in education because we have a deficit, with stiff competition, that is one of their worst ideas, because it just is the opposite of what the fact is. Economists will tell you, nothing brings more money to the Treasury. And that's a practical green eyeshade thing, but it's also about having people achieve their aspirations. It's about keeping America #1. It's about the growth of our economy. It's about everything. So that should be our major investment. Did you hear me when I said my son-in-law was a teacher in the public school system here, children with special needs, our kids went to public school here. So education, vital. And so when we talk about communities, newcomer communities and the rest, education is the key to their upward mobility, but also a key to the success of our economy. So that's one thing. That is not just about what it means in people's lives, but what it means to our communities and what it means to our competitiveness in the world. It's a very bad choice for the Republicans, for the minister, whoever did it, I don't want this to seem partisan, because I think that there's a way for us, we could have, as we have done before, written a tax bill in a bipartisan way that had transparency, that people could see what it was about, was unifying, and was bipartisan. Instead, in the dark of night, it was dark of night and the speed of light, wrote something that now people are finding out about. But they did it fast because they didn't really want people to know, and so they could pin a rose on it. You're getting this. Okay, that's welcome. But now that from a public relations standpoint, some of the corporations are giving bonuses and the rest, and we're saying that's nice. Some of it was in the union contracts already, so let's recognize that. Somewhere's not. And one of instance I had in California, they said, we're going to give a bonus, but by the way, we're going to cut 20% of the jobs in this place. You can keep the jobs if you all just agree to work 32 hours. Really? And you're getting publicity for doing a bonus. If I just may take a moment, with the permission of all of you, to just put this in a context, because this tax bill is just in sync with this attitude that they've had for a while. If you go back about 40 years ago, the disparity between the income of the CEO and the worker was about 40 times. The CEO made about 40 times as much. When productivity rose, the workers' pay rose and the CEO's pay rose. So everybody rose together. But the productivity was, the workers were rewarded for the productivity. It was called by the then chairman of the Standard Oil of New Jersey, stakeholder capitalism. The stakeholders were, of course, the investors, and there's a responsibility to the investors, to the management, to the employees, to the customers, to the community at large, how they made their decisions 40 times. So that employees were getting more money, could have consumer confidence, invest in and spend, inject demand into the economy growth. Over time, that's about 25, 30 years ago, it became shareholder capitalism. Stakeholder, everybody, shareholder, shareholder. And in that, when productivity rose, the workers did not get an increase in pay, but the CEO did, because he was making all these profits, because he wasn't raising wages, but his salary was increasing. So the disparity between the CEO and the worker went from 40 times to 350 to 400 times. Conscience, justice, fairness, just horrible. And so that's why when they say, oh, we're giving a bonus, let's raise the pay. That's why Democrats have a better idea. Better deal, better pay, better wages, better jobs, better wages, better future. And that's the way to grow the economy. Not by putting more money in the pocket of the very few, but spreading it all among the workers so that their share of the increase in productivity is recognized. So when you're talking about these things, when you come to the budget, okay, people say government tax and spend. That's what government does. Who do you tax and how do you spend it? They say it as almost an insult, but the fact is, if what you're doing is cutting the taxes at the high end and therefore not being allowed to invest in the future, you're doing a grave disservice to our country. Some patriotic. So when they say, why are we talking about this? We're not talking about this for political reasons. I wish this weren't even necessary. I wish we could have come together to do a fair tax bill. But it is about our country. And to the extent that they undermine the the financial stability of the middle class, they're undermining our democracy. The middle class is the backbone of our democracy. The middle class and those who aspire to it. That's the backbone of our democracy. To undermine that is to be harmful to our country. So the budget, again, a statement of values. It's about conscience. It's about justice. That's not what this budget or this tax plan is about.
Our next question is from the audience. It's from a student at ASU. He asks, the price of attending school continues to rise. How will this plan affect the price of higher education, and what can we do to lower the costs of skyrocketing higher education?
Well, one of the things that's on the chopping block in order to pay for those tax cuts are Pell Grants. Pell Grants make it more affordable for families to go to college. And so, the way to make it more affordable is to be investing in higher education, investing in job training opportunities. And so what this does is just like we've seen in Arizona, when you cut taxes, you're decreasing your revenue. And in Arizona, we've had the biggest cuts to K-12 education in the country. So the same thing happens at the federal level. As we cut taxes, we cut revenue, and that makes college and Pell Grants and the things that make college more affordable less accessible for people.
The legislation cuts $200 billion in student loan initiatives, reducing student loan cost initiatives and Pell Grants. But how about this again? How about if they spent the $1.34 trillion plus interest to give away to corporations for alleviating the debt that people carry now and would have lessened into the future? Wouldn't that have been such an obvious thing for them to do? Again, take away some of the burden that people are already carrying, but prevent others from assuming that kind of debt. But this, as I said to you, once I was having this conversation with them, we were trying to, when President Obama was president, when we were trying to come to a budget agreement, I said to them, one of the things we can do is to eliminate this $38 billion, I won't say what it is, but it was something that was not necessary in the budget that they wanted. And when I said that, I said, $38 billion, we can subtract that from the deficit. They said, why would we do that when we can just take $38 billion from Pell Grants, subtract that instead? And I said, can I tell people you said that? They said, no, it's part of our plan. So understand this, you have to give them credit. They are clear about their agenda. And their agenda is to starve the beast. And the beast is governance, which they have a very little interest in, right? And they're very little interest in science and evidence and facts. So if you don't know the facts about what the impact of the budget cuts are, you're just free to do whatever you feel like doing. So this is a time, a pivotal time for people to say, we know what's going on. Let's find a bipartisan path to get this done. Let's find our common ground. But if we can't, we really must stand our ground, because this is about the United States of America.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The points have been made, but debt relief for the horrendous level of student loan debt that's out there in America, a bubble that if it bursts is going to have consequences on the economy of this nation in many ways. And that is even from as simple as renegotiating to a lower interest, which we allow for other loans, to increase the number of waivers and forgiveness of loans for returning to community service and working in areas in which that need is really prevalent, making the Pell Grant year-round so that people that work are able to access that and be able to accelerate their education. And I think for institutions like the ones in Arizona, land-grant colleges, to continue to reflect what a public institution should be in terms of their priority of giving accessibility and affordability to people. The other thing is and they reopened the door to this new education department to begin to put some controls and some consequences to the predators that we have in the student loan business. The bad actors in for-profit education that prey on veterans, prey on people that don't have, and sell them into a process where they are then indebted for life. And I think that if not investing in higher education and not understanding that affordability and accessibility are key to economic growth, I think is one of the biggest mistakes in this budget.
Say one more thing. I do want to say that when we passed the Affordable Care Act, it was a dual track. It was higher education and Affordable Care Act. Most people don't realize that, but that was what happened. And we had the provisions in there for reducing the cost of student loans. Of course, that has expired. There are bills, Mr. Courtney in the House, Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, to take us to that place again. But we have to do something for those young people, for their families, but also for entrepreneurship in our country, for people wanting to have a home, get married, have a family. It's about community. And the more we think about community and recognize the word unity is in that word, that we all have a responsibility to make it better for each other. But we did do it. We have a path to do it again. But we can even think bigger than that. If we thought we had $1.4 trillion, and by the way, spending that money would have brought money back to the Treasury rather than increasing the national debt.
Leader, I'm going to ask you to take the first stab at this next one as well. Usually that happens. We've done a few of these. This is another audience question. I think it's especially important here in Arizona. What would you say to a voter in a red state who supports Republicans and perhaps even voted for President Trump to convince them or explain to them why you think the current Republican Party is not representing the middle class?
Well, I would say to them what I say to all of my Republican friends or anyone I encounter. Take back your party. Take back your party. This is, I've been in Congress a long time. We have served with people who have recognized the importance of bipartisanship and finding unity and finding a path. That's not what is happening there now. What's happening there now are that people are anti-governance. That's why, reduce the money that goes in for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, disability benefits. Really? They cut that in the bill, in the president's budget. So take back your party, because there was a time when we served with people who believed in evidence-based decision-making, scientific evidence that this works, whether it's how early childhood education, what a difference that makes, issues that relate to prevention in terms of keeping America healthy rather than acts of cruelty like stripping the mandate from their tax bill as they, in addition to that, try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. You have some ideas, bring them forward. Actually, Affordable Care Act is a Republican idea. Mitt Romney had that in Massachusetts, no free riders. So what we did, left to my own devices, I would have had flat out public option. And what we did allow for public option in the bill. So when they say, oh, you just did what you felt like doing, that wasn't the case. Take back your party. And again, being very respectful of people who voted. I just love when people vote. And that's an important thing. And respecting the judgment they brought to it, and not to make a judgment about their judgment. But you just say, pay attention to this, because as Martin Luther King said, the ballot, the ballot, the ballot, legislation, 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 your life, your life, your life. Understand your vote can mean, or maybe already has, to legislation that will affect.
The point is, it's you guys and it's us. And I'm not going, but it's us. Guys, over the next couple days, there are a lot of people who are being paid a lot of money to ruin what we are doing. A lot of the people with cameras here are here to help, and a lot of the people with cameras here are here to destroy us and to keep the Second Amendment safe. First of all, we're doing that too. I want my dad to keep his guns. We're just trying to, not let 17 of us get shot in the fucking face again. But I digress. Oh shit, I cursed. Republicans. This isn't about how great Jackie looks right now. This is about a discussion. This is about us demanding change. This is about the fact that we have already won. It's just a matter of when. And as the great Jeb Bush said, please clap. All right, I'm leaving, guys.
You know, hearing the stories of dreamers, and we heard a lot of it. Leader Pelosi had a long session on the floor talking about the individual stories of dreamers. And you hear the stories, and you know, it's an American story. Like it or not, where would Trump be if his grandfather hadn't fled Europe to come to this country? Where would Ryan be if his great-grandfather hadn't fled Ireland to come to this country as single men to try to make a future, and they did. It's replicated every day. And so, leaders point about this is a renewal of America over and over again. The contribution of dreamers, the contribution of those young people both at work and academic life and in professional life are a net plus in terms of contributions economically to this country and to this economy. No doubt about it. I think the point that Nancy made also as well, that the issue of the Dreamers and DACA and legislative solution to DACA needs to be separate and discrete, and let's deal with this. It's pressing, it's urgent, and we should. I worry, and I suspect, and to some extent I believe, that one of the reasons we continue to drag out this issue, continue to move the goalpost on any negotiation, even when Democrats have agreed to a compromise, is that it's not only an ideological fight, but it's also a political strategy to drag this out, to make this division around immigration deeper as we head into the midterms, and to use that as a wedge issue. And who is sacrificed for this? 800,000 young people. And the well-being of this nation sacrificed as well. I think for Americans, I think it's important as we turn this corner to look at the issue of Dreamers and look at the issue of immigration, not in the punitive, divisive, fear-mongering that we've heard from this administration, but look at it in the cold, historical, and necessary reality of what is going on in this nation. That ends the division. That is a unifying point that we have. And there's a humanity involved here. Put humanity aside if you must. There's a fairness. Put it aside if you must. There's an economic reality that's a plus for this nation. If that's what motivates you to come to an agreement, to come to a decision, I welcome it. And I think that the American people overwhelmingly want something done for these kids on a permanent basis, and we should. Mr. Lujan?
I would just say the Dreamers are the epitome of believing in the American dream. Nobody, I think, understands the American dream stronger than Dreamers. And if we give Dreamers an opportunity and the pathway to citizenship, we all benefit. We all benefit, because when they achieve their dreams, when they achieve better economic opportunities for them and their families, it helps all of us, it helps our local businesses, it helps our economy. So we all benefit when we give Dreamers an opportunity.
Just thank you, David, for saying that, and I associate myself, of course, with the remarks of my distinguished colleague on this subject. He's a leader for us all in the country on this. But that point that David just made, when we stand there on behalf of the Dreamers, we're doing something for them, yes, because we believe in them, because they believe in America. But we're not just doing it for them, we're doing it for who we are as a country. We are stating who we are. So it's, again, for their benefit, but it's to our disappointment if we don't stand up and say, this is what the United States of America has always been about. Let me just thank you again, for my part, others may, for coming, because your presence gives us hope. And I want you to leave here with hope that something different is happening in our country. We've reached a pivotal point. We've pivoted. It started, well, you might say it started with the election of the president, because he turns out to be a great organizer for other issues. But apart from that, it started with the Women's March. Women went out there, and their friends, families, and made their values and voices known. They saw the power. They saw the power of their presence. They saw the power of their presence. It was about some issues, but really more about our values. Our values in terms of access to health care, women's right to choose, LGBT, gun safety, immigration, criminal justice, fairness, so many issues. And they saw that power. And before you know it, they were at the airports on the Muslim ban. They were in front of district offices, and Nicole was among them, district offices. They showed up at the Capitol. They marched in the tax march last year. So that was just a big change of people saying, I know my power. And then, again, it happened this year again, and this year they tied it to the polls. Let's march to the polls. The women marched, they're running for office, they're voting, and they will win. But they are encouraging everyone to march to the polls. What more do you need to see than the leadership of our dreamers for the support that they have inspired across the country? What about those kids in Florida? Just challenging the conscience of our country on all of this. So the public, another president, and I'll close with this, I really promise I will close with this. Another president, Lincoln, he said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, almost nothing. Public sentiment. So the public sentiment, whether it's because of increased communication or whatever it is so evident, and people are acting upon their beliefs. And that is going to make a very big difference in our country. So no matter what the outcome of elections are, one party or another, that's not what is important. What is important is that anyone who is elected will be held accountable on the values that our country. So happy President's Week to all of you. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. We've learned from you about your priorities in this discussion. And once again, thank you for sending Raul Grijalva to the Congress of the United States.
Thank you, Leader Pelosi, for leaving us on such a hopeful note. It's always nice to end these things in an uplifting way, instead of talking about all of the bad that's happening out there. I hope all of you will continue to fight back against the Trump tax. If you want to learn more information about it, take out your phones and text Trump tax, all one word, to 52886. That's 52886. I want to thank our panelists for being here. And also, I hear that
All right, guys. Well, that was the town hall with Nancy Pelosi from Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for joining us on the stream for that. Of course, talking DACA, talking Trump's tax reform bill and the like. And then concurrently, we also had this scene in Coral Springs, Florida. I want to explain what this is a little bit more. As you can see, students are still boarding. There's roughly 100 Parkland students who are here in this parking lot. This is nearby to a church, St. Andrew Catholic Church in Coral Springs, Florida, where actually students were just attending the funeral of their classmate, Carmen Schentrup, one of the victims of the Parkland shooting. They're now gathering to head down all together, 100 or so of them, to Tallahassee to meet with lawmakers and push for more gun reform. We've been seeing this all over the nation. We've been seeing it particularly from Parkland students, of course, in Florida. Specifically, they're going down now to the Capitol to make their statement. So they're boarding these charter buses here that we see, lots of media present, lots of parents and friends, and high schoolers themselves. They're here together to embark on this from Coral Springs. So that is coming in live for us. If we have anything else come up on our other stream, we'll bring that to you as well. But this is live in Florida as they make a change, go down to the capital city to embark on speaking to some of the people down there, the politicians and whatnot, to encourage changing some of these laws. Of course, coming from the mouths of some of them themselves who were there during the shooting. They were survivors of the shooting. This is a big statement for them. It looks like the town hall is sort of rounding up, and there'll be some question and answer as well. So we're going to bring you both screens on that and bring up the volume.
Thank you. You want to talk to me? Yeah, I know.
Guys, going along with this same notion of students attempting to affect change in the wake of this tragedy, I don't know if you guys caught this, but yesterday in Los Angeles, our sister station caught up with some students and young people who were at this Drain the NRA rally against gun violence, and it was happening in downtown Los Angeles, and this is what some of the students had to say.
A story on the front of the newspaper, and it's like, we can't have this anymore.
So you want gun violence to stop. You want people to what's your message here? Do something concrete.
Yes. We just make it harder to buy guns, so you can't just so easy to buy one and just shoot the schools.
Thank you so much, and thank you, young boys. You have a powerful message. Do you want to say something? What do you think about this protest?
I think it's just like, I'm just doing this to like be safe, and then like I think that like why should people be shot?
Such a strong and powerful message. You know, we've covered so many of these demonstrations, listening to adult voices demanding the same thing, but when you hear these young folks, 6 years old, 14 years old, telling Congress, telling politicians, telling the interest groups to do the same thing, to get rid of the violence, to get rid of the guns, to save these lives. It's so powerful here. So we are live here in downtown Pershing Square, where these voices are being heard today on this President's Day. They say this is just the beginning. Hashtag enough is enough. They will continue to get their voices out and to be heard. That's the latest from here. Let's send it back to you.
Good job, guys.
Wow, so good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much.
I figured I'd ask. Amazing. I didn't hear one. Yes, both of them.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really honored to be here with my distinguished colleague from Arizona, the ranking member on the Natural Resources Committee, Congressman Raul Grijalva.
Congresswoman, considering what happened in Florida.
Thank you so much for that question. Of course, all of America's hearts are broken because of what happened in Florida, but it's happened too many times. For a long time now, we've tried to work in a bipartisan way, the Democrats overwhelmingly, with a few Republicans helping us, to do three things. One is to expand the gun violence prevention legislation for safer background checks. Two, to allow the Centers for Disease Control to study gun violence. Right now there's a prohibition in the law for that to happen. Can you believe that? And third is to say, let's come to the table and find a path. And we've asked for the Speaker to establish a select committee, as he did on so many other things, but to do that. So at least those three things. One more piece of legislation is to enable families to be able to say to the authorities, someone in my family is in danger of harming himself or other family members or someone else, so let's remove the gun from our home. But the first three really make the big difference. Background checks, research from the Centers for Disease Control, and a committee, select committee to say, let's get this job done.
Are you seeing Republicans start to take notice that we're dismissive?
Well, first of all, we have had enough Republicans with us all along. The problem is with the Speaker because he would not give us a vote.
Exactly.
And that's really, that's
so
the thing.
It's been about scheduling a vote, and I think there's increased willingness, but I think that the support is there in a bipartisan way for the 3 points that Leader Pelosi just outlined.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the same problem we had on the Dreamers. They wouldn't give us a vote. On many issues, they won't give us a vote when we know that the bipartisanship is there. But getting back to this important issue, I think we've crossed a threshold here, a tipping point, because young people, and when the little children were killed, we thought for sure they would pass legislation. But these children are young and old enough to know how to use the social media, articulate enough to make their point, and about the loss of their classmates and teachers, and they are just taking us to a new and different place.
Congresswoman, President Trump is extremely popular in Arizona. He won the popular vote here. Why is it important for you as a Democrat to bring this tax message here to Arizona?
Well, because this is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about the United States of America. And this tax bill will be very damaging to our future. It robs for the future to the tune of trillions of dollars. It refuses to invest in helping people because it says now we have a debt, which they have increased. So this, again, I wish we didn't have to be engaged in this. I wish we could be engaged in more initiatives for the future, which we are engaged in as well. But that can't happen if we're robbing from the future with this tax bill.
What about the possibility of repealing these cuts? We've got 10 years to do it. Can it be done?
Well, it can only be done with a different result in the election, but when we talk politics then. So any other questions on this, the tax bill? And I thank you for your question on that.
Thank you very much.
What's important to know about the tax bill is it's just not fair. It isn't fair of itself. And what it does to the budget, if you need to know anything else, almost a $2 trillion debt to cover the cuts at the high end, almost a $2 trillion cut for Medicaid and Medicare to pay for. Just not fair.
Speaker, very quickly, what do you hope at the end of this tour comes out of it?
Well, we're hoping that that people will understand that this cannot stand. This cannot stand, and that they convey to Republicans in Congress that we know what's in there. We know what harm it does not only to us individually, but what it does to our economy and our society and to our country's competitiveness globally. And that we will get policy in a bipartisan way. So that's the way tax bills have always been written, in a bipartisan way. So we're hoping for progress.
No, I think Trump's popularity in Arizona is, frankly, the point that we're trying to make is kind of irrelevant. What's really important in Arizona, and that's why the information on the tax bill and the proposed budget is so important, is that what it does, a net loss for Arizona families, a net loss for children, a net loss for people that depend on their earned benefits, Social Security and Medicare for their life support. Those are net losses on an individual and family basis, and I think the awareness of people to know that I think is the most important thing right now.
And let me just say, I would just say this one more thing. This is really not about President Trump. This is about the Republicans in Congress. The President signed the bill, but these are initiatives that they have been advocating for a long time. So this is about holding Republicans in Congress accountable for taking us down this path. Any Republican president may have signed this bill, so it's not about President Trump, but it is about, for a long time, initiatives that they have for a long time now wanted to remove the guarantee from Medicare. They want to cut Medicaid and the rest. So this is the fulfillment of a long and, in my view, negative attitude toward meeting the needs of the American people. It has more to do with the Republicans in Congress.
How do you, as a minority, stop the cuts that Ryan has proposed? I mean, he's talking about shifting to now entitlement reform, which, as you mentioned up in your speech, is cuts to Medicare, cuts to Medicaid, cuts to Social Security. How do you prevent it as a minority party?
Well, the public sentiment, that's why we're going around, because more than what the tax bill does is what its impact is on the budget. And on the budget, they're saying we're cutting Medicare, Medicaid. This isn't about reform. This is about cuts. We should subject every dollar we spend of the federal dollar to scrutiny to see if we can do it better in a more cost-effective way. And that's a different conversation. But just to cut the same amount, it's amazing, the same amount as they're giving in tax cuts to corporate America $1.34 trillion is exactly what they're cutting for Medicaid. And remember, Medicaid is a middle-class benefit. 2/3 of the money of Medicaid, 2/3 of the money spent is on long-term care for our seniors. That affects middle-class families, while the poor children are affected by Medicaid. Middle-class families are affected by it as well. So this is not about reform. This is about creating a deficit and trying to justify it by cutting Medicare and Medicaid, and that will have a terrible impact on families in our country.
Congresswoman, I'd like your
Last
take
question.
on the Harvest food boxes. What are you hearing from colleagues, and I'd like to get your take on that as well.
The Gospel of Matthew: when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was homeless, you sheltered me. That we profess to be a faith-based society, whatever our faith may be. And for them to say that they're going to cut almost $250 billion from food stamps, from the SNAP program, it's harmful. Not only is it not a statement of our values, not only is it harmful to individuals, it's harmful to the good health of America. Food stamps were created because when soldiers went to war, people saw how lacking in nutrition the American people were. When you hear our colleagues on the floor of Congress, they'll say, God fed those who worked. Adam had plowed the fields, so he ate. That's what they say. We're talking about poor children. We're talking about children and their families. So I find that to be an appalling manifestation of injustice and unfairness in this, and poor nutrition for the American people. Nicole, did you want to say something?
We're on this tour to talk to Americans about what is in the tax bill, and so the question about Trump's popularity is one connected to that.
All right, Nancy Pelosi at that town hall. That is wrapping up. The Q&A is wrapping up for her. I want to update you guys on the story that might have brought you to our stream today, and that is the headline about the Ohio middle schooler, the 7th grader who apparently shot himself in the men's bathroom, in the boys' bathroom today. What we know on that is actually not too much new information. We know that no one else was hurt. Police are still investigating that story, that situation, and it is yet to come to be revealed if he is okay, what his condition is, and if it was intentional or not. We still don't know whether or not a gun went off and it was gunfire, or if he did intentionally shoot himself. Anyway, you are watching Fox 5 Live here in the Fox 5 DC newsroom. I'm Molly Nivola, and we're going to switch gears a little bit. And did you guys hear about this? Let's go to entertainment news. Rapper Jay-Z was in New York City on Sunday in Manhattan. He racked up a massive tab for a friend's birthday at a nightclub called Playroom. He ordered and paid for, in full price, 40 bottles of Ace of Spades champagne. That's his own company. That's his line of champagne. Our sister station in New York had the story.
They went on, a real fun night. Jay-Z spent more than $100,000 to celebrate his friend's birthday.
Yeah, he and his pals were out at Zuma in Midtown for dinner to celebrate Juan O.G. Perez, the president of Roc Nation Sports. Page 6 reports that Jay-Z spent $13,000 there. Then they reportedly went to a bar called Made in Mexico in Inwood, and then spent another $9 grand in drinks there, but that was nothing. Page 6 says they then went to the nightclub, it's called the Playroom, where they dropped more than $91,000. $91,000.
So I figured out what it is.
Okay.
20 bottles of his Ace of Spades champagne, which is $1,200 a pop.
Okay.
And then 20 bottles of the Ace of Spades Rosé, which is $2,500 each.
Okay.
Taxes on the outing added up to a little over $6,000, and he left an $11,000 tip.
And that's why the waiter put it on Snapchat, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine that Jay would be happy that the bill was put on Snapchat, but it was, and we looked at it, and there you go.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what a story, Raisa. What do you think about that?
It was amazing. Can we not even discuss how much we spent? Can we talk about the tip? Oh, can we talk about the bartender's
Mostly,
tip?
it's the tip. The girl,
Or the
you see
waitress's
the
tip?
screenshot here, or from Instagram, from Snapchat that they took, $11,000 tip.
Wow. Wow.
Amazing.
That
And
is amazing.
I question it too. We were talking about this because he owns that company. Some of the money goes to Ace of Spades. Some of it, of course, goes to Playroom, the nightclub, and the overhead that they have as a company. So, in a way, he's sort of giving back to his own company, but in a way,
I think so.
He's also helping out, the people that work in there. Obviously, he tipped the girls so
Absolutely.
much. Can you imagine making that one?
Can you imagine being that girl? Like, I would totally snap it too. I mean,
Yeah, so she
11
Snapchatted
grand.
it, and it went, and that's how they got this picture.
Now, how much does she get of that? Is my
That's
question.
a really good question. Usually, definitely in this case, right, with restaurants, it's sort of a stickler situation because with smaller tips and cash, there's certain fine lines, but they say at the end of the night, especially if they're doing this under the rules, which they must because that's a ton of money.
Absolutely.
You usually claim, I think, possibly 20% of that off as taxes. I'd have to think in how much she would actually make from that.
Okay, but
How
that's
much they
still
would
a lot,
take.
guys. That's still in the
If she would
grand.
claim, then the taxes. I'm actually not sure.
It's still in the
It's
grand.
a lot. You wonder
She's
how the
still
management
making
has
a
to deal
lot.
with that.
Oh my gosh, I
They
know.
have to be
Well,
like, we have to make it fair.
management is making money. So, guys, please be generous to this amazing waitress, bartender, whoever she
Yeah,
was.
she made a lot that night. It
Yeah.
was Sunday night in Manhattan. He was just there to celebrate a friend's birthday.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
must be nice just throwing money like it ain't nothing.
Oh my goodness.
And he must blow his nose with his dollar
It's
bills.
money. He's 48 now. Did you know that? It's crazy. I was looking it up.
I oddly thought
Getting
he was
older.
a little bit older for some
Really?
reason. I didn't. 48. Wow. I mean, that's
Mhm.
yeah. He's been in the industry for quite some time.
Yeah, he has.
Because how old is Beyonce?
I'm not sure.
I feel like
the
she's in her
40s?
30s.
Is she still
30s. 30s for sure. 30s. 35. I want to
she
say.
is
Guys, if you guys are
younger.
Queen Bey fans, please comment below.
She's a bit younger.
Yeah. And today's Rihanna's birthday, guys. If
Oh,
you guys
yeah.
didn't know, she dirty 30.
Oh, today.
Today, guys.
She's young. 'Cause
She's young.
I forgot that she was okay. So she's
Yeah.
30 today.
Yeah, that wild
Riri.
teen turned 30.
You working on anything in social media?
Just trying to create a video for Instagram stories right now on this amazing our officers went to visit a local school just to show their support in light of the Florida shooting. So they came out, they gave high fives, handshakes, and hugs to the students showing up in the morning just to kind of show, we're here, we care about you, count on
Cool.
us. So that's awesome.
I saw something similar to that
Yeah.
in Chicago. There was a sheriff
Oh, they
outside
did
of a school
the same?
giving high fives. So I think
Oh,
people
that's
are
awesome.
doing that
Okay.
in communities after having seen what happened. A
Yeah.
lot of police are coming out to be like, hey, let's come
That's awesome.
together. Let
I
me
like
show
that.
we have support for you guys. Don't
Yeah.
be scared to go to school.
Don't be scared to go to school. Yeah.
This is, hopefully showing people this is not the norm.
Mhm.
So
Oh, gosh, right.
It really turned our world on its side with this
Right.
because
We didn't experience that in school.
Yeah, we were
it
talking
was
about this.
like super not. It was not common.
And I think Sandy Hook really changed a lot, and
Mhm.
maybe for a lot of you guys out there too.
Yeah.
And obviously, not a lot has changed with the reform and some of the laws, but 2012, when that all happened, I think the world totally stood
tragedy.
still.
Yeah.
And people started to work for reform. Now this happening, people are like, okay, I can't believe we lasted.
They're really pushing
5
more.
years, in
Mhm.
between,
Mhm.
and things are still not changed. We still have people with issues having guns in
Yeah.
schools, and this is a crazy case. And it's amazing too
It
that
is.
he came out alive, so he didn't kill himself. He wasn't shot.
Yes, because that's generally what happens, right? That's what
Yes,
happened at
usually they
Ward
plan
of Virginia
for it.
Tech, right?
Virginia Tech, yep.
Yep, I remember that.
Sandy Hook, of course. All
Sandy
the
Hook,
other, a
too.
lot of the other ones, Columbine.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
So many other ones, they end up not getting them in getting their charges read to them. They're not
Right.
live anymore. So this one was kind of outstanding in that way. So we'll have
Mhm.
to see sort of what comes from that. I know he's on suicide watch and whatnot,
Yeah.
but obviously a lot of issues with this family. And kid,
Yeah.
so.
Evidently. Well,
gosh.
I guess you'll bring the latest as soon as we hear him, right?
Yeah. Just today this is the live looks here, still in Florida. This was some of the Parkland students going down to Tallahassee to lobby some of the lawmakers on gun reform. They're still loading up there with the media, so that's a live look down in Florida. So we'll take the latest whenever we see students, marching. They're coming out of their schools to march. They're walking out.
Yeah.
We already have a date locked in. March 24th is where schools nationwide are purportedly going to be coming out of their schools, skipping school and leaving their classrooms to make a statement. And if that happens all over the nation, I mean, imagine all those aerial live feeds of kids walking out of their school to make a statement. It's going to be a big deal.
That's going to be a big one.
So I'm wondering, that's a Saturday, I'm wondering if we'll have a live stream of that maybe capability in here so some of our viewers can see what's going on, so we can pull different cities, because if that really pervades all of these schools all over the nation, that'll be quite a sight to see.
So it's on a Saturday.
It is.
That's
late
interesting.
March.
You know what? I like that, because these are comments that bothered me when the last time we had students marching out of their schools, and I believe it was for the Trump election and how he became president. We had a lot of coverage on that, and a lot of students were basically coming out of their schools during a school day. The one comment that bothered me was how people were basically saying this is just a reason for them to skip their class. They really don't care. And it was a slew of them that it angered me, only because you don't know what these students are feeling. Yeah, sure. I'm sure there are some who are just doing it to do it. But you can't speak and say that all of them are doing it because, oh yeah, they don't really care. They're just skipping class because they can skip class. So they don't have to, do whatever exams, turn in whatever assignments. And that's why I feel like this balance with this Saturday, what are you guys going to say now? You're going to see all these students coming out of their classrooms or universities or whatever the case may be, right? There's nothing. There's no rebuttal to that one.
Yeah, and I agree. I was going to say, if this incident shows anything, it shows that these students really do have a voice. They've turned around and been like, hey, we went through this. Yeah. We're going to speak. And all the big major media outlets are there to take this in and to listen to our pleas and what we feel. So they do. I mean, they are smart kids. These are teenagers. And like you said, some, of course, maybe just be following the leader. Yeah. But so many, you're right, a lot of these adults and media outlets included shouldn't be saying, hey, we know what you feel. Exactly. This isn't real, etc.
Exactly.
So I think that'll be an interesting one to take. Hopefully we do end up having to have a live stream on that Saturday. That'd be good. Because that would be an interesting one.
Right. Because if it'll be happening everywhere,
so
then there will be different angles from
according
different places,
to what we've been hearing, it'll be a lot of chopper video. Coming
a lot
in,
of aerial.
People coming out, probably a lot of people on the ground getting interviews with people, with kids who are doing this and asking why they're doing it, and kind of having them speak out on their own accord about this. So.
And when you hear the sincere and genuine responses, it just like really touches the heart, and you can really reflect back and say, wow, they actually do care and they want change. And can you blame them, guys?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's interesting seeing this now. Like I said, with Columbine, we were young. I didn't really, maybe I wasn't as in tune to the media then, but we didn't really see students. I didn't see this, at least. Possibly this still occurred, but I didn't see it all up in arms, really making statements, really protesting. Because I guess you could say gun violence, it was a thing, but it wasn't as steady, I think, as we've seen it now.
Right.
And maybe it's just because we're older and we're seeing it more. We're in news, but we see it more, and people are really trying to take a stand this time. And we see it in politics. People are taking stands. People are making their appeals and their speeches, and a lot of stuff going on in Capitol Hill because of this. So it all kind of comes into one full circle.
Absolutely.
These students making their statement, politicians lobbying for reform. We'll see what happens. And then we go from there. It's been a busy couple of weeks, that shooting. My goodness. I know it's told sort of the story of a lot of the things we've been reporting on today, with the students walking out, with the students attending the funerals of their friends. The funerals of their friends. This was one of them here in Coral Springs. And that's where they were. And then they got on these buses, and they're headed down to Tallahassee, the capital, to make their statement to the leaders there. So anyway, until something happens, this story probably won't die out, and it shouldn't. So.
And it shouldn't, right? It should not be brushed under the rug, as I feel it happens. Like, you'll hear about it for X amount of weeks, give or take, and then what happens? That's what I constantly see people commenting on our Instagram page also. Yeah, let's follow up the story, but let's not brush it under the rug, because I'd like to know what the outcome is too, and I'm sure we'll be seeing it within the upcoming months, weeks. You don't know,
right?
But we'll see what change takes place, right?
Yeah, interesting stuff today, guys. Thank you so much for coming on our stream. Thanks, Raisa, for contributing.
Thanks, guys.
With some of our social media news. We're Fox 5 Live in the DC newsroom, and you're joining us on our YouTube stream. We go from around 11:30 into the afternoon today, rounding out about 2 o'clock Eastern time, which is about now. So we'll close it down. I know we're closing it down for the afternoon, but we continue all our coverage on all of our digital platforms, including our website, where we gather a lot of our information, where you see stories that we pull from every which way, and often we're bringing you video coming from those stories. So join us there on fox5dc.com. Also, our YouTube stream here. We hope that you're a subscriber. And then you can also join us on Facebook. Fox 5 DC is our webpage, our timeline, and our Twitter as well, Fox 5 DC, that we man and we post to, and Marissa does a lot of the contributions
Instagram
there.
too, yep.
So we try to keep you in the loop of everything breaking. So do follow us, and we'll catch you again on another stream coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, going into the midway of the week. Very exciting. Happy day, guys. Have a great day. If you're in the DMV area, it's a gorgeous day out. It's like 65 degrees. I just got a text. You got to get outside for lunch. It's a beautiful day. So I think I'm going to go do that shortly.
That's awesome.
So looking forward to that. We'll show you this beautiful day. Check out the view of the Capitol, guys. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.